Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you happen to be joining us on this very special occasion. And we have someone on the couch with us. It's our 50th episode. So, everybody, little round of applause. We actually got to 50 episodes, which is super exciting. Never thought when I rang my friend and said, we've got congratulations going over the screen. Never thought that we'd get this far when I rang him and said, come on, let's get our skates on. So here we are. And not only do you have the pleasure of my delightful company, you also have the pleasure of my beautiful co-host's company. So Mr. Curdy David Perriman, who is the CEO of the Heroes Mystic. He's a cosmic guide. It's a good thing to be, I think, sometimes. We all need a little bit of someone being in the driver's seat, or to help us understand how to be in the driver's seat of our own life. Helps you navigate those ups and downs, the ins and outs, and the squirrely bits of life, as we term it, the divine mess. So, and we're also today joined by such a delightful guest, and we're so excited to have her on. Beautiful Vaughan Davies is a dynamic speaker, writer, educator, and spiritual practitioner. She's a Presbyterian Minister, a Certified Educator with the Association of Clinical Pastoral Education, a Seminary Professor, a trained spiritual director, and she's also a chaplain and works with people who deal with grief and loss in all the different forms that it comes in, because trust me, there's more than one, as I learned when we had our little chat the last time we got together to see if we were a good fit for one another, as we like to do. Christine's also a bit of a nutty. She likes to do triathlons, a bit like the man that I spend my time with. Crazy humans, why they would choose to do that, but you know, whatever floats your boat. She keeps bees as well. So that's a good thing. I had a little bit of bee juice in my coffee this morning, so I'm very happy with that. And she's got some beautiful children who I'm sure she will share her love and adoration for once we get started this morning. So welcome, Christine, to the virtual couch. So lovely to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation together.
Yeah. So I suppose it's a good question to ask. How did it all get started?
It is a good question. I get asked that a lot. People say hospital chaplain. That's not a job that you hear every day.
Yeah.
And indeed, I am around a lot of suffering and loss on a daily basis. So it's not surprising to me that people would ask, why did you sign up for this? And my story started as a young kid. My parents attended a Presbyterian church near our town. And I really took to it, much kind of to their bewilderment. I loved going to Sunday school and singing in the choir, and really just delving into the life of the church. And I was convinced as from a young age of God's presence in my life, and really feeling like I was called to help God's people. That's what God wanted me to do. And I thought the best way to do that was through medicine. And my mother was a nurse, so she may have kind of pushed that dream along a little bit. And then really two things happened. One, I became an emergency medical technician. So I was an EMT and working to provide people safe transport to the hospital when they were going through a medical crisis. But it was really being in the backs of the ambulances with people and holding their hands, when they were scared. I could wrap a wound, I could give oxygen, but it was more about bearing witness to the pain that they were in and sitting with them. And then around the same time, I became a patient. I had a series of hospitalizations and a number of physicians trying to figure out what was going on with me. And eventually I did get diagnosed with generalized epilepsy, which I'm grateful is, under control. 20, 30 years later. And I was really dismayed by the bedside manner of a lot of the physicians that I was encountering, and put off by the guesswork of it, or people that weren't necessarily listening to what I was saying. And really looking back, it was a simple diagnosis. It shouldn't have taken that long. But it was around the same time that the church I had been attending had a new associate pastor. And she reached out to me and took me out to dinner and just talked to me about how everything was going with my new diagnosis, what it was doing to my spirituality, my emotional life. And I felt better in that session than I did in any of my hospitalizations. And it helped me to realize there are lots of ways to help heal people. And just as I was sitting with people in the suffering in the backs of the ambulance, or, my pastor sat with me in my suffering, I wanted to be able to do that for other people. So that's primarily what I do in the hospitals. I sit with people, usually on the worst day of their lives. And then I also teach interns and clergy and other students about how to do that work, right? Because it is hard work to do. And then when I'm not doing all of that in my part-time work, I also do spiritual direction where I get to meet with people individually, because I found as much as I get a lot of meaning out of being with people in crisis, I also, miss those people after they leave, and wanted to be able to be in continual conversation with people about the divine in their lives and get to know them over the course of months and years. And so I have a practice of doing that on the side as well. So that's my very long answer to how I came to be doing this work and how I found you all.
Feel like I feel that it's still a short answer because we can go on so many tangents in what you just shared. Like, first of all, I'm really happy to hear that your health, like, you're feeling better now and you got this under control. But there's something you mentioned at the start of your beautiful story, really inspiring, like how about God's presence. You said as a kid, like, you were feeling that. So can you explain, like, as a kid, how did you feel God's presence for you? How did it present itself?
Yeah, it's a good question, especially as I think my kids now are probably around that same age, and they definitely don't feel that. They think church is boring and are not into it. So for me, it is evidence of, and I'm a Presbyterian minister, as you said, so I come from a Christian tradition. But when I'm working with people, I engage people of various traditions, and we can talk all about that, or no traditions. But I'll speak from my perspective, which is, to me, it's evidence of what I would consider the Holy Spirit at work, because and similar, my sisters, they had, they didn't like church, and they're still confused by what I do sometimes. And I, just really felt it was a place of calm and connection. And, would have lots of memories in my bedroom, saying prayers to God and writing them down. And I read all these theology books before I even got to seminary. Once I got to seminary, I stopped reading theology. I read what was required, but yeah, I was just always drawn to it. And yeah, that's the best answer I can give. It's still kind of hard to describe how it came to be.
And I know that when we were talking, when we were having that initial conversation, that you were explaining there's many, many forms of grief. And it's interesting because I was talking to a friend the other day about the grief that's experienced when you lose a relationship, or you lose associated relationships, when that one primary relationship falls apart. So can you maybe explain a couple of different types of grief, so that people just don't think it's, oh no, someone's died and then, my world's fallen apart. It can happen on lots of different levels.
Of course. I am what I consider to be a grief evangelist. I am always talking about grief. I'm not so much fun at dinner parties for that reason. Um, but I am a big believer in the fact that we are all grieving something at any one time, because anytime there is a change in our life, even a happy change, there is a loss that is associated with that. And anytime there's a loss, there is grief that can come out of that. So I'll give you an example. Even a happy change like a wedding, right? People are getting married, and usually people are pretty happy about that. And I used to officiate a lot of weddings when I lived in New York City. And I remember one time sitting at a rehearsal dinner, and the mother of I think it was the mother of the bride, was sobbing. And I was like, oh no, does she not like the groom? What's going on here? And I thought, let me check in with her and see what's happening. And she said, no, I just realized that after tomorrow, I'm not going to be her emergency contact anymore. And so, even in something as joyful as a wedding, there was a change in the relationship. And again, one that she wanted and was happy about. So, just as an example, that even with good things, there can be some loss because it is a change. So, some of the types of losses, and I wrote a whole article on this too. So, if your listeners want to read more about it and check it out, I imagine you'll put my information in the show notes, but it's also on my website. And so, the first one that we usually have in our lives as a child is a material loss. And so that's probably the most straightforward loss when we talk about it. It's losing something, losing a thing, right? And it's really about the attachment to the material item. So if I lose my, earrings that I got at Target, y'all have Target, right? That are $5, right? That's not a big deal. That's why I don't pay a lot of money for my jewelry, because I'm not very good at keeping it. However, if I lose a ring that was my great grandmother's and is this family heirloom, I am going to be quite devastated about that. So it's really about the attachment. So a child losing their teddy bear for the first time, right? That is an example of material loss. Then there are one of the losses I think that you were talking about is role loss. Which is, or actually it's relationship loss and role loss, but role loss we see sometimes when people are no longer in the profession that they were in. So sometimes when people are retiring, that's usually a joyful moment for people, but we see a lot of people fall into really depression. And I think a lot of that is undiagnosed grief because they're struggling with who am I, right? It's this loss of an identity. And then the other loss that I think you're referring to is relationship loss. So it's one thing if we're talking about a death, and I can certainly talk a lot about death because I've been a part of many, many deaths. And so that is, something completely within relationship loss, but it's not just death. It can be the breaking up of a romantic relationship, a friendship that just kind of fizzles out, or you move away and you don't get to see your neighbors as much anymore. And so it's really anytime that you're not in the presence of others. And in a way, we all kind of went through that loss in COVID, right? Like we could be in virtual presence maybe, but not to be in that physical presence. So those are just a few examples, and some of the losses also, the types of loss also overlap. But I think that there is a lot of loss out there that if you just scratch below the surface a little bit in your own life, even, as your listeners may think nothing big or major has happened to me, recently, which, thank goodness for that. And there's probably some changes that have happened in your life. And those are going to bring about potential feelings of grief.
And when you're educating these new doctors and oh, my brain's just gone. Preachers and the people that are coming through, do you have certain students that kind of are like ducks to water and just get it? And then there are others that go, oh Do I have to talk about that? Is that really part of my job?
Sometimes I am fortunate in that I get to interview the interns and the students that I work with, and so I can get a sense of who might be doing this work just to check a box, which for credit or for ordination purposes. And the other good news is my hospital is one of the more intense ones, and so if people just are trying to fulfill the requirement, there are easier places to go. So a lot of the individuals self-select and come to me because they really do want an intense experience. Because in my hospital, the chaplains are and most people don't even know what a hospital chaplain is. I should explain that a little bit, I suppose. Hospital chaplains are essentially an extra layer of emotional and spiritual support for patients, for families, and for the rest of the hospital staff. In my perfect world, everyone would have the opportunity in my hospital to have a visit with a chaplain. Every patient, we don't have enough chaplains to make that happen. And so we require a lot of our staff to make referrals to us. So we are frequently getting, phone calls or consults from nurses and from physicians, but there are some situations that we go to automatically. So for instance, we're a level 1 trauma center. So anytime there has been a major accident, there's been a car accident, the chaplain shows up and they are the family support. Because you can imagine getting that call, you are going to be very anxious and worried as soon as you walk in the door. And so we are their liaison to the medical team to sit with them until they get whatever news. And then if it doesn't go well and the patient doesn't survive their injuries, we're already embedded there to provide that bereavement support as well. And we do the same thing for all of the codes within the hospital. So anytime anyone goes into respiratory distress or cardiac arrest, again, we're there to be the family support person.
That's, I feel that's really important to have those, like you described, the hospital chaplain, like to have someone who is like a layer of extra emotional and support. But does it happen that someone, like a family member, like refuse, quote unquote, like they don't want you to be present, does it ever happen to you?
Oh, yes, all the time. And in fact, when we're responding to that level of heightened crisis, I actually tell my staff, I'm like, don't lead with the fact that you're a chaplain, because they're going to automatically assume that their loved one has died. We chaplains tend to be the sign of the Grim Reaper. So when I go, I say, I'm Christine. I'm from the hospital. My job right now is to be with you all. And then as we're sitting, they might say, like, wait, what is it that you do again? And then I could say, okay, so I'm the chaplain. We go for everyone though. This is our protocol.
Yeah.
And those are more of the, crisis-oriented visits. Some of what we do is routine visits as well. Like I said, in a perfect world, every patient would have the opportunity to see a chaplain and have a spiritual assessment done on them. But sometimes when I'm doing those or going room to room, patients will say, "Oh, I'm not religious." I say, That's okay." And I might say, "I'm not religious today either. Tell me what, is weighing on you. What is, on your heart right now." And my biggest compliment is always when people tell me at the end of, spending 30 or so minutes with me in their room, they say, "Yeah, at first I didn't think that I wanted to talk to you, but now I'm really glad that I did." Because people don't know what a chaplain is. I have to tell people that I'm not the church police, because sometimes they'll start with, "I haven't been to church in like 3 years." I'm like, "That's okay. I don't care." I'm really here to support wherever you are coming from. But if off the bat people say, "No, not interested," I say, that is fine. Have a lovely day. If you change your mind, let us know. Because sometimes we're the only people that they get to say no to. There's people coming in and out of their room, all day long. And so just to be able to give them the dignity to decline our visit, that's something that can empower them.
That's a beautiful thing that you're doing, like how you're serving the world in that sense. But I wanted to go back a few steps, like because you mentioned about like loss and how we navigate when people retire, for example, they ask, who am I? Like, and how do you help people? Because you in your bio as well, it's mentioned like spiritual director, one of the many things that you do. So how do you help people to navigate through, like this process of finding who they are?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that can help with that is maybe I'll get to it by looking at what is religion and spirituality, and that might lend us into that question a little bit. So, because that's again, people are very confused. They might tell me they're not religious or they're not spiritual when I'm working with them in the hospital setting. And so there's, um, you know, my very simple definition for spirituality is that there's kind of three components of it. It's about connection with oneself, connection with others in a community, and then connection with something that is greater than oneself. And so for some people, that is God or the divine, transcendent. Others, it may be the universe or nature. But in looking at all of those things, what helps give a person meaning as well and make meaning of their life. So for some people, religion helps with that. And even in some instances where, like myself, where, I am, going to church every week, it may not check all the boxes, right? I may have to find other parts to fill certain spiritual parts of my life. For some people, religion is not going to be it at all. And I always like to lift up that religion can be very problematic, and there's a lot of toxicity out there, a lot of abuse, and that really, you know, turns people off to it, but also has really led them in a path where they've internalized a lot of, the negative things that they may have heard, and turned it inward to guilt and shame as well. So that's my quick definition of spirituality. And then if I were working with someone, like you said, maybe who just retired, who was trying to figure out, what is my worth in this world? Um, I'm probably going to start by hearing more about their job and what they liked about it, and listening for, okay, what are the themes? I mean, what are the losses there? Are they missing the people? Are they missing the intellectual stimulation? Are they missing, maybe their job was outside, right? And they're missing, walking around, delivering the mail or whatever their job happened to be. What are the elements from it that they miss? So that might be one thing. So we can really pull out, and naming that as a loss, I find to be powerful, because if you name it, you can tame it, right? We've all heard that expression, and it helps to normalize it. Because otherwise, I find people say, like, I'm going through this funk and I should be happy and I don't know why. And we know anytime anyone's using the should word, that doesn't help matters. But if people have something that they can hold on to and say, oh, that's what this is, it normalizes it, it demystifies it a little bit. So I think that's where we would start. And then certainly, how are they doing in their relation? So we talked about relationship with oneself, relationship with others, and then relationship with the divine. What happens when spiritual distress occurs is that there's a break in any one of those connections. And so for that individual, it may be, I'm no longer in this community of coworkers and colleagues who, were my friends. So that's a break in connection with others. And then if it's also, and I don't know who I am if I'm not doing that, it's a break in that connection as well. So some of it is about what do we need in those areas to reestablish the connection.
Thank you for sharing those three components, like because I feel like the connection with oneself, with the community, and with something greater. I like how you frame it, like how you name it, like you said. But just, I feel like Tina had a question as well. Okay. So just regarding you, for you, like how do you maintain your connection with yourself?
Well, that's a great question. If I'm asking other people, I should be able to answer it for myself.
Yes.
So one of the things that I love to do is write, and to help me process, but also to help me see connections and pull in stories and kind of the precious encounters that I've had with patients or with people I'm working with in spiritual direction, or kind of stories from my own life. So that helps me to get in touch kind of with my own voice. So that is one practice that I like to do, which is why I publish a newsletter that people can read about once a week-ish, sometimes a little less, where I go into a lot of these topics with more detail. Another way that helps me to connect with myself, and also I would say the divine, is through a practice of centering prayer, which is kind of like the Christian form of meditation, where you're focusing on a word for God and kind of saying that over and over, and sitting with myself in the stillness, being grounded in that. And then also that, like I said, helps me to connect with God. And Tina was laughing at me before, but being in physical embodied states helps me. Sometimes I'm cursing God when I'm doing the triathlons. I'm thinking, why did I sign up for this? But no, it's very much, when I can feel at home in my body, whether it's through yoga or through biking or swimming. The running is the part where I'm cursing. I don't like that one so much, but that also helps me, I think, to really feel connected to myself.
It's just so much. There's so much in it, like in terms of, people only, I think, ever see grief as nan or pop or mum or dad, or someone in the immediate family has passed away, or someone that, perhaps they're going to school with or they work with or something like that. They don't see the grief that comes from, like you say, a change of environment, a change of job, a change of identity, moving away from the people that you've developed those quick instant
Mhm.
friendships with, like the bloke I sit next to. And it is a struggle when you kind of lose all of that. But I think in that part, that's when you're asked to spiritually up level. It's asking of you to take more of that internal time to have a really good look at yourself to see what's important. And I do like the fact that you're a writer and a journaler. I'm a little bit the same in the fact that I like to write everything down when things are struggling, or I reach out and talk to himself or my partner, or I've got a couple of. It's interesting as you get older, like that friendship circle really sort of closes in, and it's nice that they are the type of people that call it honestly. And I suppose that's the one benefit that you get to be when you're in spiritual direction with others, is that you don't have any perceptions of what is going on in their life. It's a very clear picture for you. How do you find people take that clear clear seeing of what is going on? Do they struggle with that?
Hmm. Yeah, so I think in spiritual direction, it's helpful for individuals to be able to speak the things aloud that they may not have previously. A lot of times people tell me, I haven't told anyone else this, or I haven't told anyone else this yet, right? Sometimes I'm the first person, but then that gives them a bit more courage to be vulnerable with others in their life. And I think really having a non-judgmental presence where, I've had people tell me all sorts of things, and being able to hold it really tenderly, especially when there's a lot of clergy out there who may have judgment, and individuals may have had experience with um, clergy of all stripes, of all denominations, of all faiths, really saying things that could have been hurtful, and so unpacking some of that. And I think we don't have so many spaces in our life where we can just be listened to. And sometimes that's sitting in silence with others as well. And so sometimes I will walk my spiritual directees through, very simple breath work, or a simple meditation, or do a reading, and just encourage them to take whatever time they need, to then open our session sometimes. And sometimes I have people sitting with me for 5, 10, 15 minutes just in silence, sometimes crying because they have no other space in the day where they are really connecting with the divine, and they happen to be connecting with the divine in my presence, right? So connecting with themselves, connecting with me across Zoom. I do meet people in person too, but everyone prefers Zoom these days. If anyone's in New Jersey, you can come see me in person. So yeah, I find our time together to be very sacred for that reason. And sometimes people don't know what's going to come up, and then they're surprised by it. But I asked some of my spiritual directees recently, I'm like, how would you define, what you get out of spiritual direction? Like, what would you say this is? And because it is kind of, spiritual direction is something that's not very widely known, a bit like chaplaincy. I chose kind of two vocations that not a lot of people know what it is all about. But it is something from kind of the ancient church, but other people of various faith traditions have also started doing it, and people of no faith traditions. And to be a spiritual director, or sometimes people call it a spiritual companion, means that you're trained in how to sit with people. And so some of the things that people said when I asked them about it was, they said it's like a warm hug. They said it's a time apart to sit with God when I know that God is always with me, but I don't always feel it. And so it's creating a space to feel it. Trying to think of some of the other ones that people said. Someone said it helps me to feel more present in the moment. And it's pouring into myself when I'm used to pouring in for others. And that I tend to attract those people who are very good at caring for other people, not so good at caring for myself, which I understand. I am a hypocrite. I've gotten so much better at self-care, but I know what it is to focus on others first.
And obviously, apart from being a crazy person and wanting to do 3 lots of exercise in one whole day, what does self-care look like for you? Because everybody's version of it is different, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find when I'm talking about self-care, teaching about it, what I like to emphasize is that everyone needs it, right? And especially my students who think that they are all superheroes and it doesn't apply to them. I say, no, 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 you need it. The problem is you don't realize that you need it. And so your stuff's going to come out all over other people. And so wanting to really level the playing field, like this is something that we all need, and it's not a weakness to engage in it. And in fact, it can be denial if you're not really doing it. And then I encourage people to look at what gets in our way of doing the things that we should do, because I think that is often huge to unpack. What is the barrier? Because we all have lists of things and we're like, oh, I know if I could just do this, I would feel much better. But it's figuring out the mindset of, is it that you don't feel like you deserve this? Is it that you are so used to putting other people first in your family of origin? Is it especially for clergy people, a lot of times they feel like they're serving God. And so if they take a rest from that, they feel like that, that's not within, what God wants for them. So I think starting there is helpful. And then, yeah, looking at what are the practices or the things that you can do to restore your soul. And they're going to be different for everyone, which makes it hard, right? Like my husband's form of self-care is reading philosophy and history books all day. I'm like, no, that is not mine. Mine might be like romance novels, so some of the other things that I like to do in addition to the physical and the movement that we talked about before is I have a Friday night ritual where I just soak in the tub. I don't, my kids watch a movie without me on a different floor, and I am just, really soaking the week away and entering into the weekend. And sometimes I'm, doing Reiki while I'm doing that, or listening to something, or reading some magazine that's gotten wet. But that's one way that I kind of enter into the weekend. Um, the connection with the land is also something that has been really nurturing to me. So that's why I'm a beekeeper. My son is trying to talk us into getting goats. So we will see if he wins or not. But we have chickens and a trail and ponds and things like that. So even weeding out in the garden and thinking about other things and seeing new birth and death in different ways in the seasons is something that is also a way that I care for myself. And then I have a whole team of professionals that I keep on my payroll. So from a therapist to a massage therapist to a physical trainer to I had a chiropractor, he retired and moved away. So I'm looking for a new one of those. But having individuals that are helping me care for myself as well and making that a priority has also been something that has sustained me. And I'm fortunate in that I have wonderful peer support. So in my profession as a educator of chaplains, I'm required to be in a peer group of individuals. I also have, like I said, a lot of clergy friends as well, and spiritual direction, supervision groups that I meet with, and a husband who puts up with all of all of the stuff that I do. I feel like life is very full, but also very rewarding.
And do you have a like a one-on-one spiritual director for yourself?
Oh, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
Her name's Carla. She's fantastic. Yeah, no. And I started meeting with her before I got trained in the work, and being with her was something that helped me. And I still meet with her. And
Yeah.
so.
But it's one of those things, right? I don't think you can coach without being coached yourself, because, as you're attempting to have a better or a deeper understanding of your soul's purpose here and your own personal trials as to what you're meant to move through whilst you're here, it's always handy to have somebody who can see with clear vision as to how you're moving through that. That's why completely honest best friends
Yeah, I have one of those too. Who has a different role. She's not on the payroll, but I'll buy her the margaritas to tell me exactly about me. Yeah.
Exactly. You got a question, my good friend?
Because I love like Christine's, like a Friday ritual that you do.
Yeah.
Like that's a really good one. But I was like thinking, if I come to you, like and I say like, Christine, I don't have any, like self-care. Like I don't know any ritual. I don't have any hobby. I don't know what I like. And what would you suggest then to that person?
Yeah. So, and I think it depends, right? If someone's looking more for the spiritual presence in their life, like we want to look, and there's like spiritual elements of self-care as well, or spiritual practices that may lead to a feeling of connection with oneself. So I actually have some assessments that I use around self-care in particular, because there's different realms for nourishment. So there's like the physical realm or the body realm. There's the social realm, like we talked about before. Like, are you feeling, cut off from others? There's the learning or intellectual realm. And then there's also, things like um, uh, health and finances and, other pieces as well. So I think just hearing a little bit from them about, okay, what are you hoping for in your life? What is a longing for you? Are you wanting to connect more with God? Do you, are you feeling lonely? Right? Are you, um, you know, what's going on for you in your work life? What's going on for you in your social life? Kind of exploring it all and seeing what comes of it. And then I do have spiritual practices that I'll sometimes work through with people. And I can always recommend those. But sometimes I don't like giving people homework and an additional thing to do. So sometimes what I recommend to people is you can take practices in your everyday life and infuse them with a sense of sacred or meaningfulness. That's kind of as I gave you my example of my bath, right? Like that's kind of what I do with that. I don't take those every day. That would be very luxurious. I wish I had the time, but something as simple as, a cup of coffee, right? So there is a difference between my sitting out on the porch, drinking my cup of coffee, listening to the birds, thinking about my day, savoring these, beans that are from Costa Rica and, full of certain flavors, right? There's a difference to that than me drinking my coffee, half spilling it, chasing my kids around, trying to get them out for the bus. By the time I go back to my coffee, it's cold, but now I'm late. So there's are two of the same exact actions, but done with different intentions. So sometimes it's really about looking, it's almost like a spiritual habit stacking. Like, what are you doing already that you can just be a little bit more mindful about? Maybe you walk to work if you're lucky, and instead of being on your phone or you can listen to this podcast. Don't listen. Maybe you don't listen to other podcasts, but just noticing what's going on around you, noticing like how the wind feels on your face, walking by other people if you're passing other people and what that feels like. So there's moments all throughout our day. Sometimes even there's a famous teaching by Brother Lawrence who talks about connecting, with God through washing the dishes. And even that, if we do it with a certain mindset, can help us to connect. So in some ways, spirituality as well as spiritual care can be about our approach and our intention and our mindset.
It's funny that you mentioned the washing the dishes. Yesterday, I met with a couple of people, and they are like coaches as well. And I was sharing one experience that I had with one client where I recommended her practice is about washing the dishes. Because what I told her is like, she was like, oh, I have this pile, my dishwasher is not working. So I say, okay, how about we try something? We put every negative thought that you have on each plate that you have, and then you wash it away. And then it becomes like a spiritual
Mm.
practice. And
Mm-hmm.
then she added to it, she invited her kids in. She got twins. So she invited her twins in, and they are having fun as a family. That the kids are telling her, so are we going to clean our mind today? So
That is
that's
like an
incredible,
excellent
right?
parenting hack as well as
Yes, that's
a spiritual hack.
incredible.
Mm-hmm.
That her kids got involved. They love it so much
Mm.
that they are no more focusing as such as cleaning the dishes, but it's like every negative thought that she had during the day or whatever is coming up, fear, she put it on the plate. And I say, visualize it and feel it, and then clean it and feel it's like leaving your body and
Mm.
it's getting clean just like you. And funny enough, like she did enjoy, and then the dishwasher fix itself, by magic. It's like it all happened to us. And I say, yeah,
Oh.
it's not the universe job, like just saying it's
Mm.
not the universe. But that's how simple it should be, right? Like you mentioned about the
Mm-hmm.
ritual, because sometimes people come to us and they are looking for that complex, like they think it's like complex,
Yeah,
complicated,
yeah.
like you need to sit on the yoga mat for 20 minutes or 1 hour when people
Mm-hmm.
tell you I can't sit still. And I'm like,
Yes.
good on you if you can't sit still, but there are other ways that you can focus on, right?
Yes, I have a lot of people who think that they need to meditate, every day for 20 minutes to an hour, which for some people that works. Or I have some clients who are clergy themselves, and they think that they need to be, reading scripture every day and feel guilty when they're not. And I think that's the big problem is when we set these high aspirational goals for ourselves, we wind up falling short because often they're impossible. And then we have guilt on top of the fact that we're not caring for ourselves or we're not connecting, to the divine in our lives. And what I love about your example is that it was also connecting with her kids, right? And that they saw a change in her. So not was it just about her connecting with herself, but it's also bringing them involved into it. Oh, that's beautiful.
But it also gives you a good opportunity in that point, because I've got boys and they don't do the face-to-face conversation very well. So if you're standing shoulder to shoulder and, you're washing while they're, wiping the dishes, it gives you an opportunity to have those conversations about, what are the things that happened in your day that maybe could have gone better, or you'd like a do-over. What's your one moment that you'd like a do-over for today? Or it just gives you an opportunity to have those conversations. But I had, in speaking about self-care, and you were talking about rituals, I had a coach that said you needed to bring more sensuality into your day. And she said, now don't get this wrong, we're not talking about intimate relationships, we're talking about engaging your five senses. So she said, when you're eating, it doesn't have to be, because she was talking about parenthood, it doesn't have to be this shovel it down your mouth so that, you can go and do
over the
20
sink,
loads,
while you're standing.
20 loads of laundry. That, a bit like you've mentioned about the cup of coffee, is that you're enjoying the taste sensation and the flavor in your mouth and doing all of those sorts of things. Or like you said, you're out walking, whether you're walking the dog, you're feeling the sun on your skin or the wind on your face, or you're noticing nature around you, or you're enjoying that moment where you get to hold hands with your little human, who won't be little humans for very long, and then they might not want to hold hands with you anymore. So it's about engaging all of those, and it brings you back to yourself, because it stops your mind from projecting out all of the things. It's bringing it more into yourself. Like you said, that's such an important practice of turning inward and going, how am I feeling today? And does this bring me joy? I saw birds going off their choppers yesterday morning when I took the dogs for a walk. There was such joy in it. They were flying from tree to tree and they were having conversations, and it was just, it was enough to make me stop and, watch the joy that was going on. And it's those little things that people don't recognize that fill up your cup, that when you notice the little things, the bigger things are easier to handle, because you've got enough there to be able to hold the weight of whatever is brought to your plate.
Yeah, it's a slowing down and a stillness and a noticing.
Yeah. So with you, do you have spiritual practices with your kids? Like for those that are parents, are there simple things that you can help your kids learn how to turn inwards for themselves?
Yeah, so one of the things I do with my kids, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully, is we'll do really simple breathing practices at the end of the day. And or sometimes we did some this morning when there was some yelling over a Nintendo game. Something as simple as I'm sure your listeners know about, the box breath or square breath. My kids also enjoy, there's a bee breath, there's a lion breath, there's all, if I encourage people, if they're interested in that, just to go on YouTube. There's all sorts of, meditation breath work for kids. My kids like to make up their own breaths, my kid will be like, this is my drinking water breath. And, inhale in as he holds up his fake cup, his mimed cup in his hand, and as he spits it out, and exhale. So they can be creative with it as well. So we'll do that. We'll do, I used to pray with my kids, and then I think the rope prayer was getting too much for them. And so now I'll do something simple like, what was the best part of your day? What is there anything that you're worried about? Is there anything else you want to tell me? And sometimes I've been very surprised. We call it calm time with mommy. And sometimes I'm hugging one of my kids, the other one doesn't like to be hugged, so that's okay while we do it. So hopefully there's that connection as well. And so it just developed into this kind of sweet ritual that my hope is that ends their day with a sense of connection, but also, like that gratitude and that physical, um, calming down with the breath as well.
I find it like interesting you call it calm time with mommy, but what happened when mommy is not feeling calm? So what are like your advice for mom out there who are feeling like overwhelmed, like I don't have a moment for me? I know Tina
Mhm.
tell this story many times about not having her time for her when boys were growing up. So
Yeah.
do you have like one piece of advice for them to find that calm time?
Yeah, it is so hard, especially in those early years as well. I have friends with much younger kids, and oh my goodness. Um, and that's where I think really looking at your whole day as like, where's the opportunity for me to make something like my own or to have some of my time in it, right? Because of course, I would love to gift every mother of young children out there like a 90-minute hot stone massage. But I know that's not a reality, and that's not a day-to-day, thing anyway for any of us. But I think if there are um, moments where you can take some deep breaths, and I think like it was true for myself, and I'm guessing a lot of the moms out there too. One of the things that makes it especially hard is thinking that you're not doing a good job when you probably are. If you are thinking that, I am sure you're doing a good job and certainly doing, the best that you can. And some days are going to be harder than other days. And so I think recognizing that, I think if there are ways in which you can find a tribe of people that are going through similar phases, I think that can be really helpful because it can be very isolating as a parent of young children and probably a parent of all children as well, whatever age. But I think something about that when people are, and can't leave the house because of nap time or, potty training and all those types of things. So yeah, I think finding people that you can be vulnerable with and talk about how hard it is, even if it's just texting them and saying, "Oh, yep, this is the third time that I'm changing an exploding diaper today," can help people to feel like they are not the only ones going through this. But yeah, if there are any pockets in which you can carve out some time for yourself, even if it is, um, I would joke that, when I went back to work after my kids, I was just so thrilled to be able to go to the bathroom by myself. And because, you're so used to having to accommodate for everyone else. So I know a lot of people that will get up early or, after the kids go down, like really trying to be intentional about doing something then for themselves, not just, picking up or cleaning the kitchen, but really saying, no, no, that can wait, and doing something that's going to really bring you back to a sense of wholeness for yourself and authenticity so that you can remember who you are in the midst of caregiving for others.
Yeah, I think the same applies to when you have teenage children
Yes,
and
you'll have to tell
that
me all about this, Tina. Oh my goodness, mine are not so far away.
it's interesting. I was having a conversation with my 19-year-old and bless him, at the moment he's in this cycle of every time he calls me, it's a complaint about
Mm.
something. And oh, I don't like doing this and I don't like doing that. And I'm like, are you being paid? Does that money provide petrol for your car? Does that money
Mm.
provide the rent that you're paying?
Mm.
Does that enable you to go out with your friends? Yes, it does. And I said, but the thing is, every time you complain, the universe is going to keep dishing up the crappier jobs for you to do until you recognize that you're being paid. You are physically able to complete the tasks that you're being asked to do. And whether you voice your complaint to your employer or not, they're going to get a sense that that's what's going on. So they're endeavoring to see how hard they can push you. Like the universe will keep dishing out the really juicy, yucky stuff until you go, thank you. Thank you for putting money in my bank account every week. And thank you for providing the body that enables me to do these things, and just show a little bit of gratitude. I have to say it in a very diplomatic way, or otherwise I get, oh, Mum, that's just all your voodoo nonsense. It's like, yeah, no, actually it's not. But this is your journey, my sweetheart. And I think that's the biggest thing that parents, particularly of teenage and growing children, that you can't muck up their journey no matter what you do or how you do it, unless you're completely intentional in being a not particularly nice human. You can't muck up their journey. So their journey is not on you.
Yeah.
They came through you but are not of you.
Right.
So you have to be very mindful about the level of guilt that you place on yourself as to when they muck up, when they do all of these things. It's their soul endeavoring to create a remembrance within them as to what their path needs to be. So it's taking a step back and looking at, I had to do this. These are all the things that I had to do to learn about myself, and remembering to be patient and to trust and to let go of all the other rubbish that's going on, and know that what is showing up for me at this point in time is essential for my ascension.
Yeah. Well,
and it's hard lesson to learn, very hard.
Oh,
I'm
of
just getting it at
course.
50, right?
Oh, well, you want the best for them, right?
Of
And even if
course.
your listeners don't have children, this is true for most people in your life, right? When
Yeah.
they're coming to you with a problem, right?
Yeah.
We want to be able to fix it for them, and we can't always fix it.
Correct.
And the fact that he is calling you,
Yes.
to me, I'm like, that is fantastic. And he's getting his own calm down time with mommy.
Yeah.
in his phone calls. But yeah, I think the connection is clearly there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have to go through it ourselves. I mean, we learn best by experiential learning, right? Someone
Yes.
can tell us something till we're blue in the face, and until we're in the midst of it,
Yeah.
that's when the lesson is going to hit. But oh yeah, to be the bystander watching where you can't control the outcome would be so hard.
It's like waiting for a car crash sometimes, like a metaphorical one, right? You're waiting for the crumpled bits to start falling away, and then for them to go, oh, hey, I'm okay. I can kind of dust myself off and feel all right. But I think there's also that moment too where you get to go, if you're going to keep calling and complaining, I don't know if I want these phone calls. I love you, but there's a limit to what can go in my pot today, and this is not one of them. So I think, there's certain circumstances where you have to draw a really strong boundary for them to have that wake up and that recognition that, yeah, I really do complain a lot, don't I?
Yeah.
And if Mum doesn't want to talk to me, that's a problem.
Well, right, because you're also modeling for them how to have relationships in their life, right? Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants a friend who is always, a Debbie Downer type all of the time. But wanting someone who can, appreciate the good and be with others in the bad.
Correct.
And oh my goodness, the amount of patience and wisdom that you're having to have right now. Mm.
Yeah, just a lot of deep breathing is the best that we can offer at this point in time, and just
Yeah.
go, this is your circus and your monkeys, love, however you choose to guide them. And, you know, whether it's a happy circus or whether it's a jungle in there and they're all going crazy at the moment, that's completely, you know, you're the leader. You get to choose, you know, and you're the man. You've got to learn how to navigate this stuff. And if you don't know how to navigate it, well, then we need to help you find, you know, somebody else we were talking to the other day, we need to help you find a spiritual director, but I can't put it in that frame.
No, it probably wouldn't go over well. And if you recommend it, it's probably not going to go over well either. Maybe maybe someone else will recommend it to them in
I
their
hope so.
lives.
I hope so. I'm sure he's got his angels watching out for him. So I'm sure someone will get put in his path that will give him what he needs at this point in time.
I feel like as mom as well, it's like learning about that boundary, like to say no, that you are actually allowed to say no to conversation that you don't want to have, or you're not feel, you know, like you don't have that emotional space for it right now, but maybe later, or setting a boundary, you know, like even like, yeah, I have like 15 minutes and then apologies, I have to go, or something like that.
Yeah.
And just saying things that are, these are really hard. I know it's like really hard to say that, but this is like teaching them as well to, you are allowed to say no to things that you don't want to hear, or you don't want to see, or you don't want in your life, and showing how to place a boundary gently, you know, lovingly, compassionately, like moms do know how to do that, even
Well,
if
and
they
that
say they don't know.
Yeah. And that makes me think too, your listeners that have children may be laughing alongside us right now, but those that don't or are not of that age, my guess is they have individuals in their life who maybe are similar in terms of always needing something from them. And, I talk with a lot of my students who are clergy because they have a lot of those people in their life where I call them they're non-reciprocal relationships, right? So it's this idea that it's not a life-giving relationship. It's one person is being fed, but not both. So if you think of, do you have people in your life, or I had a person in my life where I recognized, I was like, oh, every time I get off the phone with her or I see her, like I feel worse. She feels better. I'm like, this feels like work to me. And so encouraging people, okay, you may have people like that in your life, and they may be in your professional life. So you can't set as much of a boundary as you would like to, but being able to say like what you can do is sometimes helpful. Like, so to Diva's point, if you say like, we can talk for 5 minutes and then, I have to go, or, we can talk, but first I want to hear about the positive things, or just having those candid conversations with people in your life, whether or not they're family or others, and just recognizing, okay, what is it that you need to be able to care for yourself?
Yeah. And also, obviously, after listening to today, is there loss associated with that? Is that underlying somewhere along the journey as to why they feel the need to constantly be dishing out the Debbie Downer all the time, so maybe there is loss in that space that needs to be addressed and identified or spoken of, so that then they can go, oh, yeah, okay, I understand that now, or that gives me a direction in which I can do my own learning or my own unpacking for, and then hopefully you see a change, right, in the next time you have conversations with them. So if our listeners would like to get in contact with you or learn more about you and the work that you do, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, so the best way would probably be my website. It's Christine, V is in Victor, and then my last name, DAVIES.com. So on there, they can see my newsletter and read that. They can, book a consult with me, read more about spiritual direction. I'm also on, all of the social media as well. So all of those are listed on my website also.
No worries. Well, I'm sure our technical director will add those all onto our show notes for people to follow up if they want some more information. Is there any last little gem that you would like to throw in for today?
Well, it's just been so lovely to talk with each of you. And so I think I would encourage people to like, as you said before, as we talked about, to notice what, griefs they may be holding and to consider how they may treat themselves gently in the face of that grief.
Yeah, fabulous.
I think that's a beautiful note to end this episode. Like, it feels like we can go on with that conversation because it was so beautiful. And I think there are different topics that we mentioned, like especially related to that loss. And I feel like as parents
Mhm.
as well, we get that sense of loss, like when you see your kids growing because you wish they will stay small, like that you can tell them to do what to do, like they won't argue with you, they will just listen, maybe not
You've never
nicely.
met my children, obviously.
Yeah, but no, I was like one of those children's not listening, so don't worry. Yeah, but it's it's interesting like how loss and grief can relate to many areas of our life, even if at times we don't recognize it. And like Tina said, like loss is often associated with someone dying, like or passing away, but there are different forms of loss. So thank you again, Christine, for sharing about what you do, how you serve the world in your beautiful way, and keep serving. And obviously, we'll share all the details about you on the show note. And we'll see you soon. To everyone listening, thank you for tuning in. And I will lead the last word for Tina, as usual.
Thank you. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us on the virtual couch with our gorgeous guest today. And thank you for tuning in for episode number 50. And we look forward to the next 50 and more beautiful souls who will be joining us on the virtual couch. So until then, take really good care of yourselves and we'll talk to you soon. Ciao for now.
Thank you.